Life Audio.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Homeschool Conversations. I'm your host, Peggy Ployhar, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Whether you are folding laundry, sipping your third cup of coffee, or hiding in the pantry for just a quiet moment, this week's conversation is one I think that'll speak to a lot of us. Our episode is called Homeschooling Autism with Hope and Healing, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Heather Anderson, a homeschool mom who's been walking this road with her amazing son, Tosh, who has nonverbal autism. Heather's story isn't some polished, perfect fairy tale. It's real life, hard lessons, surprise breakthroughs, and a whole lot of learning through in and out what works. She's going to share how she went from surviving to truly thriving and how her family found healing, joy, and academic success right at home. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you're looking for more encouragement, helpful tips, or just a reminder that you're not the only one trying to figure out this as you go, head over to spedhomeschool.com. It's packed full of resources, real support for parents like you who are homeschooling unique learners. All right, let's jump into the conversation today. Welcome, Heather. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm so pleased to be here, Peggy. A lot of the families in my program are big fans of yours, so they're excited for me too.
Yeah, it's always nice to be on somebody else's program or whatever, because then people get to actually learn about you instead of you focusing on just resources and stuff. And I enjoy being on other people's podcasts for that reason too. It's like, oh yeah, my story kind of gets lost. And
yes, it's fun to go from interviewer to interviewee sometimes.
Yes, exactly. And you've got so much to share, and I'm so excited to have you just to have this time to be able to showcase that for our families and for you to even be able to share with your own community a little bit of your own story too.
Yes.
And kind of in a compact version of that. Because I know you've written a lot of blogs, you have a lot of resources, and yeah. So I just love for you to start by sharing just a little about your homeschooling journey and what led you to making that shift.
Sure. All right. Well, my son, like you said, has non-speaking autism, severe level 3. And we were lucky that we have a couple of things that worked in our favor. First of all, even though he's truly non-speaking, he only has one word. And that word's mom, which is a blessing and a curse. But he's always been a pretty good communicator and able to get his point across without words. And so I saw the intelligence in him from the very beginning. We also, we lived in Washington, D.C. when he was young. I was a reporter in the district, very important. And we had a wonderful nanny, a young woman who was going to college for occupational therapy and had worked in an autism preschool. And so she knew exactly what to do. I had no idea what I was doing. And so she discovered that one of the things that calmed him was to sing the ABC song. And yes, and so that kind of opened up a love of letters and reading and learning and that sort of thing. So she also taught him counting. And so he was equipped with the two primary skills that we teach in my program, which is letters mean a sound and numbers mean quantity. They're not just symbols to put in order. So she helped him get over that very first academic hurdle. And so we came back to California. Success in Washington, D.C. is a 24-hour gig. And I did not have that as the mom of what was becoming a high needs child. And so we came back to California and settled down, put him in public school. We did the Head Start IBI preschool, the federal program that so many families have a wonderful experience in. And like them, we did have a wonderful experience. He blossomed, he was learning, he was getting great reports coming home every day. And I was very encouraged about public education. Then kindergarten happened. And this is so typical in a lot of
It is.
families.
I was going to say that shift is so hard for so many kids that have been in that program and it works so well. And then school.
Because they lose the one-on-one and there's just the assumption, the incorrect assumption that the non-speaking kids have intellectual disability, and they instantly kind of start treating them differently. The standard becomes a standard of behavior rather than a standard of learning. And so I would pick him up and I would excitedly ask, what did he learn today? And they'd kind of look at me like I was crazy and say, well, he ate his snack and he went potty and he didn't hit anybody. Yeah, that's great. What did he learn? And it quickly became clear that they thought I was crazy for assuming he should be learning things. Yeah. So that there were a few final straws, and that was it for public school for us.
That's probably the same road my son would have taken. But we started homeschooling right at that kindergarten age too. And things changed. We and I tried a few different things, as a lot of parents do, right? I got a lottery spot in a charter school. So we went to the charter school and he was placed in a gen ed classroom. Because they didn't really have a lot of special ed facilities, and it didn't work out for him. It was just too overstimulating, but he had the opportunity to prove himself as a serious student. He tried very hard, and he did, show mastery of this was first grade, some of the first grade, academics. And that was where I met Mr. Sims, who has helped me so much with my program, special ed teacher. But, when that didn't work out, then I put him back into our neighborhood public school for just a semester. And I was just stunned at the difference between a charter school that was willing to work with him as a mainstream student and give him truly the least restrictive environment, and our neighborhood public school where, I had a conversation with the teacher that he's ready for addition. They were trying to tell me he can't count past 7. I'm like, that's impossible. He's counting to 100 at home. And I told her, I'm like, he's ready for addition. And she looked at me and said, well, how in the world would I teach him that? Oh boy.
She was a special ed teacher.
Yeah.
And it hit me that they had no intention of teaching him that. And then the other one was when the final straw was when an aide pulled me aside and said, they take away his AAC device as soon as you leave and put it way up on a shelf because he talks in class.
Oh.
Yeah. So to summarize, we're discouraging communication. Unwilling we don't know how to teach him addition. And so I'm a very, give me that, you're doing it all wrong kind of person. And I'm like, I could figure this out. And the experience I had at the charter school was such a positive one that I just ended up homeschooling through them. And then that's when I really got the program together for my son. It really started seeing some results for him.
Yeah, that's encouraging. A lot of parents find themselves at that place and they're like, well, what do I do? And so your story is filled with a lot of hope, as well as some encouragement and resources too. So continue listening. I know some of your other story has been filled with hard seasons around sleep and aggression and burnout. And so I definitely don't want to skip over those two. Can you talk about what those days looked like for you as a mom?
Sure. So I've actually completely crashed out twice now. The first,
I have too.
And the older my son gets, the more I'm realizing that it's probably going to happen again in his transition to adulthood, because I kind of stalk parents of older non-speakers who are pretty successful in life and want to know every single thing that they go through. And so I'm noticing that happens too.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
Hey there, parents. Are you tired of the babysitter search struggle? Look no further. Welcome to KingdomCareSitters.com, where Christian families connect with like-minded sitters who share their faith.
I was searching for a reliable sitter who understands our faith and family dynamics. With KingdomCareSitters.com, I found the perfect match.
And guess what? You can discover sitter profiles, post jobs, and even schedule and book short-term or long-term care, all on the user-friendly website, KingdomCareSitters.com.
Plus, KingdomCareSitters.com lets you pay securely online. Whether it's date night, work commitments, or just some me time, Kingdom Care's got you covered.
As a sitter, I love being part of this community. I set my own rates, connect with amazing families, and make a difference in their lives.
Are you ready to find your perfect match? Visit KingdomCareSitters.com today, because when faith meets childcare, it's a match made in heaven.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
So the first difficult time was after we moved back from Washington, D.C., and it was clear that I was going to have to give up my career, which I had worked so hard on and had always, I never dreamed of being a mother. You know, while the other girls in school would practice writing, you know, Mrs. Andy Rogers, you know, like the husband I would have and the babies I would have in the home. I practiced my name on big checks because I was going to be the owner of the company. And I played entrepreneur. Like I didn't play dolls or mommy or house.
Right.
I played entrepreneur, right? So that was, I am work. Like this is me and the essence of me. So to lose that career and be a stay-at-home mom and full-time caregiver was a very big adjustment.
Yeah.
And so I became very depressed. And then there was no place for my son. You know, I knew he was smart and the schools weren't helping. And I'm very into natural health and the doctors weren't helpful. And you know, I was really into, you know, all of the causes of autism from the environment, which my son was never exposed to. And so it was a very dark place for me. And my marriage was failing at the time. And so I was, you know, waking up in the morning and making a screwdriver for breakfast. And, you know, it was bad. And a lot of moms get in that situation.
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of them on social media that are in that stage. So homeschooling and this business is kind of what brought me out of it. You know, that once my son was finally able to make academic progress, that relieved a lot of the future anxiety that I had and just made me feel like there was something that I could build and put myself into and make use of the talents that I was leaving behind in my former career. So that was the first hurdle. And that's the one that we talk about on my website in my About Me page. The second one happened recently, 2003. My son became very physically and mentally ill. And I was completely gaslit by doctors, by everyone. His pediatrician refused to refer him to psych because those pills, that doesn't help anyway. And this is just how these guys are. And he told me, you either need to toughen up or put him in a group home because this is completely normal. And, you know, he was violent and extremely destructive. Me and his dad and my son were walking around with scratches and bite marks and bruises. And broken windshields and broken windows, and the walls were down to the studs. And it was just horrific. He would look at me with a fear in his eyes, like he didn't know who I was, like he didn't recognize me. And I'm like, this is not normal autism, you know?
Right.
So I just wrote a blog on this because we had to involve the police. And luckily for me, the police in our area are extremely supportive and very well trained. And it was opposite conclusion of the horrible tragedy, that we saw last week with the non-speaker killed by police. So I wrote about that and how wonderful an experience that was. It turned out my son had very severe mental illness, and that was just waved off by the doctors as behaviors. Luckily, the police were able to hook us up with the correct supports and resources. And after about 6 months, he was completely stabilized. We were able to do that safely at home. It was pretty bad. Like that, we could do a whole podcast on that story. But
we went through the same thing with one of our kids just in the last year too, and it is not easy. I haven't really talked about that experience myself. But the police, there's a lot, like in our local area, they have a whole mental health unit, and they are very, very good in what they do. And they can walk you, like you said, we had been asking for resources from multiple people, and finally it took the police to get involved before anything really happened. And so you feel bad. You feel like this isn't what I should be doing in my house, and what are my neighbors going to think? And at this point, it doesn't matter anymore, because I feel threatened. My child is out of, control, and something's got to happen.
Losing control with reality.
Yeah.
I mean, It was that bad. And I couldn't get any help. Like, we were ready to go with a group home because all the doctors were telling us, well, what we can do, and so I couldn't we here in California, we have what's called regional centers, which is a private public partnership that distributes services to disabled people in California. Okay. And they refused to help me. They said, well, just put him back in school. And I'm like, he can't go to school. He's violent. He is violent. And they're like, right. Well, that's their problem.
Oh,
no wonder.
What a good answer.
Don't like funding special ed because, the resources, the community resources are like, well, just send them to school. Let them deal with them. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not what school's for. And so when I went to we have a wonderful kind of local Facebook group for special needs parents in my area. And I asked the group, I posted, what should I do? And the parents were like, call the police. The regional center will act if you have a paper trail of police activity. Right. So I did that.
And that's what the policeman told us too, is that, it's better that you're involved and this is a good situation that we come into instead of us finding something further down, but also they're able to respond in a much more informed way. Yes. If you have other follow-ups, they already have that record in place. So yes.
Yeah. So the very first, the two officers that came on the very first call, one had a mildly autistic son and the other one had a level 3 severely non-speaking son. Wow. And so they knew exactly what was happening in our backyard and advised me, like, if you invite us in and he charges at us, we are required to use police force, which is not appropriate. We know this is dad. So we're going to stand outside and be here until he calms down. We can come in if needed, but we're just going to, and then they referred me to our behavioral health team and got us in to see a better level up psychiatrist. And they literally went to the regional center and said, if we get one more call from this family because you didn't help them, you're going to hear from us. They threatened them into providing us with some support. Regional Center expected me and his dad to both stay home with him 24/7 for the 6 months he needed to stabilize. And the police were like, these people need to work.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's not, you're supposed to do your job. So yeah, that was quite an experience. But through that fire, we as a family became really close. Even as divorced parents, we are such a team now. And my son trusts us, like really, really, really trusts us. And through that, we developed some incredible communication skills where, he can tell us now, if these things are coming, and and he, even if he's having an episode and I sound scary or I look scary, he trusts that, no, I know that's really mom, like I can talk him down. And so it's just like, I feel like that horrific experience set us up for success with him forever now.
I think the same happened for us too. It's been it's coming. Well, we celebrated about a year into this a couple of weeks ago.
Same.
And
March
and
was our
so,
1 year anniversary.
And how it has changed my marriage, how it has changed my relationship with my child, how it has changed our whole family dynamic. It has opened everybody up to like being able to do family counseling that nobody was thinking, what do we need that for?
And so, mom got a therapist. Finally.
I love that your story is the same way, because how encouraging that, two totally different stories, we're living in different areas of the country. And my child is verbal, but still has a lot of other things that he's dealing with. His was more brought on by, he was physically attacked. And that led to some really downward spiraling things. And, but yet on the end, we can see it as it being a positive because of what it has brought about in healing, really. So
isn't it crazy that you and I have had such similar experiences? And we had no idea about the other. And that's, I really would like to talk about this more, not in your form, in your call, but I think this is something that parents need to hear, that when your child is prescribed antipsychotic medication, that is such a blow, and there is so much shame associated with that. And we don't realize, especially with the non-speakers, that almost all of them take that medication. And had I known that, like I know that now that I start talking about it and I talk to parents of older non-speakers, they're like, oh yeah, we're on that and this, we tried that and that didn't work. And now then we stopped and then we started again. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's the process.
And so I really kind of want to normalize this experience so that it's not so fearful for everyone.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
Hey there, parents. Are you tired of the babysitter search struggle? Look no further. Welcome to KingdomCareSitters.com, where Christian families connect with like-minded sitters who share their faith.
I was searching for a reliable sitter who understands our faith and family dynamics. With KingdomCareSitters.com, I found the perfect match.
And guess what? You can discover sitter profiles, post jobs, and even schedule and book short-term or long-term care, all on the user-friendly website, KingdomCareSitters.com.
Plus, KingdomCareSitters.com lets you pay securely online. Whether it's date night, work commitments, or just some me time, Kingdom Care's got you covered.
As a sitter, I love being part of this community. I set my own rates, connect with amazing families, and make a difference in their lives.
Are you ready to find your perfect match? Visit KingdomCareSitters.com today, because when faith meets childcare, it's a match made in heaven.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love, because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at thrivent.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
It is. It's a crazy adventure, and it is a lot of trial and error. And I don't think people realize that. It's like we change meds and then go on vacation. It's like, well, that was the worst vacation ever because of that med change.
Yeah, well, or they grow, or they develop, they get bigger, and it stops working, and it's
yes,
the med game is a long game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and of course, it needs to be supported by natural health and all those things as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of game changers, you mentioned that sleep in your story is also a game changer. What changes did you make and how did that affect everything else?
Yeah. So I always recommend that sleep be the first thing that a family tackles before homeschool, before education, because if you're not sleeping, you're not learning. I love sleep. It's my favorite pastime. It really is. I have a very full life on the other side when I'm asleep.
Right.
And so I was just unwilling to give that up. I can't. I was the friend in college who, would go out and disappear before midnight because I cannot stay awake. So that was a top priority for me. So I've been interested in natural health for over 30 years. And so I had a lot of things to try. For my son, here's what worked. Diet, right? So the obvious ones, the non-dairy and gluten-free, that kind of stuff to get rid of the constipation and the tummy pain and that kind of stuff.
Right, because that's highly prevalent in any child on the spectrum.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a problem for me as a child, I was a weekly pooper for many, many years. And so that's the first thing. The second thing though is processed food. My son is extremely sensitive to processed food, as am I. Just a little bit of MSG will keep me up all night.
Wow.
And it gives me like restless leg feeling, and just the feeling that I want to crawl out of my skin. All kinds of processed food dyes and too much sugar and all that stuff. So that's even more important for my son than dairy and gluten. So I've been making everything from scratch for a really long time, but I get to sleep. So it's totally worth it. Another big thing for him was Epsom salts in the bath.
Oh, yes.
Because
the
magnesium, yes, autistic people are unusually low in magnesium, and magnesium is needed to regulate sleep. So, and it also supposedly gets rid of toxins in the body and just makes you feel relaxed and takes away that restless body feeling. And so, and the fun thing about Epsom salts is that they can play with it in the bath, and it's a nice sensory thing. And it tastes terrible. So if you have a bath water drinker like I did, it will put a stop to that as well. So so many benefits to Epsom salts. So we started doing that, and those things did it. Also, my son, when he was younger, he liked some white noise. When he was an infant, we did the shh, 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 shh to get him to sleep.
Right.
And so then we had to keep that going with, white noise apps and stuff. And he still uses those from time to time as well. But now that he's 14, he has his own iPad and his own YouTube channels that he likes to listen to when he falls asleep. So he's in charge of that now. But and for years now, he's been 12 hours a night.
Wow.
Consistently. Yeah.
That's great.
It's privilege in this home.
Yeah. I'm sure that was a process though, of what you figured out, what worked and what didn't.
Yeah. But I mean, I started when he was preschool, 3, toddler.
Yeah.
And he had the night terrors and that kind of stuff too. That was a rough period as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That diet is a huge thing. And I know a lot of parents struggle with it because their kids are sensitive to food and textures. And then you get picky eaters. And then you try to, it's just like the spiraling downward trend of trying to help your child be healthy and to use natural things. And they seem to be very resistant to it. Do you have any advice for parents who are kind of on that track?
Well, yeah, you have to eat the same food. The reason it worked for our son is because his parents both eat clean. I'm kind of a hippie, and his dad is a coach and like a strength and conditioning coach who was a bodybuilder. So he, knows exactly what to eat and how to eat clean and that sort of thing. So, our son he didn't know what fast food was. He didn't know what soda was. He, the worst thing he got was like hot buttered toast was like his cheat meal. So, he was just, he grew up thinking it was normal that like everybody eats broccoli and has a green juice, and he didn't know any different. Right. So, you can't have everyone in the family eating Pop-Tarts, and then your autistic kid has to have yogurt. Like, that's not gonna work. Everybody has to eat the same way.
Everybody has to do it. Yeah. I think the greatest blessing for us was we moved to a farm when right after a couple of years after my son was diagnosed, and we started growing our own food. And so, our kids, they not only worked on the farm, but they ate what was from the farm. Yeah. And it was a huge shift, and yet it made dramatic differences in their health and all their well-being all over. So,
absolutely. I grew up on a farm and, was in 4-H and went to Kansas State University. So I know a lot about plants, and we've been eating from the garden for years, and we live in Southern California. So we're lucky in the backyard. We have 2 orange trees, a lime tree and a lemon tree. Oh,
nice. Yeah.
And strawberries and a blueberry bush. And
I just keep killing them because we get a freeze here in Texas, like once a year. And I'm like, if they could just make it.
Texas weather's impossible. Yeah, it's 105. It's 20 below. And that's just last
thankfully
week.
I'm near the coast, so we don't get that low. But yeah, it's still crazy.
I grew up straight north of Amarillo, so that was rough weather.
Yes. Yep. That will happen there. So when you gave up, the mainstream schools, and what did that look like, and what did that process of starting to teach reveal to you about how your son learns?
I was so lucky that we were assigned Mr. Sims as our supervising teacher when I finally decided to homeschool him. I went and homeschool through a charter, the same charter that had allowed him to try to be in the mainstream class. And they assigned Mr. Sims. And I didn't realize it, but when my son was in the mainstream class at that charter, he was working with Mr. Sims' son. So Mr. Sims was indirectly already working with my son because his son came to him and said, "Dad, I have this non-speaking kid. He's really bright, but can't keep his body still. What do I do?" And so Mr. Sims put together a program for my son that presumed his competence. Mr. Sims is known in this area for taking kids off the completion track and getting them a diploma. And I charged into that charter, that mom, who was like, he is going to have mainstream academics, don't you dare give me this, presumed incompetent stuff. And so they said, "We have the guy for you. Let's put you with Mr. Sims." And we hit it off. And, the first thing that he did was through his son, work with my son to teach him beginning consonant sounds and make sure he had those down before we moved on to the CBC word families. And so instead of sitting him at a table with a pencil and trying to get him to do a worksheet, Mr. Sims had me put letters on Post-it notes and stick them up on the wall, and then tell him which letter makes the B sound, which letter makes the sound, which letter makes the F sound. And Mr. Sims even took it a step further, where he would put several of them up in a room, and my son had to go around the room and find all of the B's or all of the F's. So it was a treasure hunt, active, fun, but also showing academic mastery. And that method is included in my program. I basically digitized all the things that Mr. Sims showed me from his 35 years as a successful special ed teacher, but he hadn't worked that much with the non-speakers. And so together we kind of developed it, made it more geared toward non-speakers. And so, you know, once my son, if he is allowed to move, and also we learned, I learned about errorless learning, which is where you show the student how to do it first, and then gradually back off instead of doing hand over hand or just throwing them to the wolves. Our children tend to be very anxious about getting it wrong. And so if you can tell your student, when I could tell my son, I'm not going to let you get it wrong. I'm not going to let you get it wrong. Just watch me. You can join in when you're ready. And my son's, like a lot of our students, has a nice big ego. And so as soon as he figures it out, he's pushing me. I know how to do this. You know? That's when you know you got him. So that's, I figured out that was a big part of his learning style. He needs to move. He can't, you know, if the second you make him sit down and hold a pencil, that's going to be all of his focus, is keeping his body still and trying to make his finger move. And so the knowledge just gets lost along the way. And even
there's
now,
so many sensory things involved with that too. That cloud thinking and the ability to concentrate. So absolutely.
So we incorporated movement and, you know, taking away the pressure of always having to show expressive mastery. We don't do that every day anymore. And he flourished. He's now 14 and he's doing 8th grade work in all subjects and beyond in some subjects. So he, like I said before, he's always been a good communicator. Not in neurotypical ways, but like he, you know, point at the right answer is something he's been able to do for some time. Point at the correct multiple choice answer. A lot of our students can do that. So that's kind of the first skill that we work on with them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And but unfortunately a lot of curriculum just isn't created that way. And so I'm glad that you stepped in the gap to do that. And so Heather's website is in the show notes for this show. It's the autismoasis.com. And she'll talk about more about that site as we progress into our conversation. But so I'm assuming, you know, that wasn't your only support system, the father and son team, that you've added to that team since then. How did you go about just figuring out who would best support you with your goals in mind for your son versus what you had received? Because I think a lot of parents are like, well, what am I getting into? You know, putting myself out there for, you know, therapists and other people. And do you have any advice on navigating that?
Sure, I do. So when it comes to therapies, therapy is so individual. What works for you will not work for another family. What worked for another family is not going to work for your kid. So the only way you know is to try. All you can do is try. I give therapies 6 months. 6 months to see something. If I see nothing, then no harm, no foul. It's either not for my kid or it's not for him right now. And nobody's wrong, nobody's right. It just didn't work. So I think that attitude is very important. Just try it. All you can do is try. Also, you don't have to do all of the things. I feel like parents get the hard sell from therapies.
Yes.
If you don't do ABA, if you don't do speech therapy, if you don't do OT, if you don't do PT, if you don't do feeding therapy, if you don't eat equine, you're a horrible parent that you have to do all of these things, right? When I meet moms who are completely burned out, I tell them to cut the therapies in half. 50% gone, get rid of it. Pick the 50% that's doing the best, and then get rid of the rest, let your kid be a kid.
Yeah.
So that's on the therapy side. On the support side, I'm obviously very friendly and talkative. And so I would purposely try to make friends in the waiting room, the lobby of the therapy, or back when he was at public school or doing like the charter school, once a week little class thing. I would try to make friends with all of the parents that were there. And we throw parties here. We throw parties and meetups for non-speaking friends. And so since, for 10 years, we've had friends come over for birthday parties and Halloween parties, and we've developed a really awesome core friend group that's still together.
That's very cool.
And so my son has like 5 or 6 really, really good friends. He just had a birthday party. They all showed up. And so there's some completely non-speaking friends. And then we have some like mild to moderately autistic friends as well. And, we lock all the doors, and, it's such a good environment. Like, the new parents that come, the new friends, they're nervous. Oh no, he broke something. Like, that's not a problem in this house. I always like to say it's not a party if nobody is drugged, kicking and screaming out of the place. It wasn't a good party. That comes with it, right? So I have a mom group, a local mom group. I have friends who are parents of non-speakers who we text all day long, and whenever we're cleaning up poop or whatever, we have that outlet of, the other mom on the other end that says, yep, I get it.
Yeah.
We lost a window this morning, or whatever.
Right.
So that's important. And then educationally, of course, Mr. Sims, I was so blessed with Mr. Sims, but we also have had some really good therapists along the way. At that charter school, there is a wonderful speech therapist that got my son to use AAC for the very first time. And she figured out right away that he's an action guy. And so he loves office chairs, rotating. He loved her chair. And he got, as a reward, a spin at the end of each session, right? So she turned it into, well, I'll spin you right now if you use your device and tell me how many spins you want. And then she took that out to the playground with pushes on the swing. And that made the connection for him that, oh, this iPad, this app can get me what I want. And that opened the floodgates. And she was so great with him that even during the pandemic, he was able to do virtual sessions with her by himself without me sitting right there with him, because he trusts her so much and wants to impress her, So she was amazing. And then, of course, like many families, we discovered Spell to Communicate. And we live close enough to the Spellers Center in San Diego that we can drive there every week. We also are close to Autistically Inclined in Hemet, California, and the Speller family camps up in the mountains of Idlewild. We do that each year. And we met Erin Clarelli of Sunrise Therapy. She's an OT who specializes in non-speaking kids and apraxia in severe autism and trains other OTs. It's actually her birthday today. And so she's very visible in our community and very helpful. She's like the autism whisperer. She and her staff can knock out my son's meltdowns in seconds. Like they immediately know what the problem is. I'm sitting there going, is it your body? Is it your feelings? Are you mad? Are you upset? And they instantly know and can do the squeezes or they instantly know what he needs. And so we are so blessed that we have the Speller Center. Aaron shows up at all of the surf days and stuff, and we can completely relax. Both me and my son, just like everyone here is well trained and knows exactly what to do. And so, earthquake. We're having an earthquake right now. I'm not kidding.
Huh.
All right. The initial rock is over. Let's see.
Okay.
All right. That was it, I think. All right. I think we're all right. California.
Yes.
We actually live like right on the San Andreas Fault, but on a big slab of rock. And so all of the maps of like what would happen in the big one, we would just get shook, but we'd be okay. So, anyway.
Okay.
You might be a special needs mom if you have an earthquake and you're like, oh, fun.
Yeah.
Let me info dump on you about what I know about earthquakes. Yeah. So anyway, I'm so lucky to have all of Southern California is
all of that
amazing community for non-speakers.
Yeah.
I would love to reproduce it everywhere in the country.
Yes, I know. So many people do not have any like even like one of those resources, and you've got multiple. And so that is just huge to have that much support and to have that many connections for your son. So as far as your son goes, how does he connect socially and communicate with his peers? I think a lot of parents kind of wonder, how do you navigate that?
Well, a lot of his friends are non-speaking. And when you get two non-speakers together who have been friends for a long time, they just click, they groove, and like he has one friend, my son is very physical and kind of rough. And he has a good friend who has a few words, but is also impulsive body and kind of rough. And they will roll around like a cartoon of just like stars and marks, and laugh and like have each other in a headlock and just be giggling like maniacs, right? So he's able to relate to his non-speaking friends very well. I'm lucky. I'm lucky in that he is very aware of the world around him, and he's pretty good at matching his behavior to what's around him. Like when he's feeling great, he can move through the world kind of undetected. So it's, but of course he's big. He's 5'10", 200 pounds. So in the event that there is trouble, that would be kind of difficult. But he's always been very social and friendly, and it's difficult for him. Like when we go driving around and he sees boys his age zooming through traffic on e-bikes, I can tell like he really wishes because he would be the one who would be out there zooming through traffic, risking his life. Like, personally, I'm kind of glad he can't, but so he wants to be in school. He wants to be in public school, but he knows that they will infantize him, and he knows that he becomes very aggressive when people speak to him like that. So he knows it would not be a good situation. But he's lonely and bored at home. So I try to get him together with friends and get him out as much as I can. It's difficult to get two non-speakers out at the same time. Usually one guy's ready to go and the other one's having a bad day, so that makes it kind of rough. But he really shines when, we have our local get-togethers. The Speller Center in San Diego has little monthly social events. And nice. When we go to the camp, he's very, so I would say try to find your non-speaking student other non-speaking friends. You can't just assume that just because they're non-speaking, they're going to be the best of friends. Right. And other kids I've tried to pair him with, and he was like, no, I don't like that kid. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's normal, right? Like you have to presume competence.
Right.
To presume competence is to understand that they're not going to be best friends with everybody.
Right.
So yeah, that's a tough one, especially as teens.
Yeah.
Because they want to be social, but they're also like easily embarrassed and very self-conscious and very aware that they're different. And, my son had a meltdown once in Target because as he was walking in, he made a noise, an autism noise, and there were two teenage girls walking out. And they were like, "Oh, what was that? Oh," and they kind of laughed at him or whatever. And that was really hard on him. Like we had to leave. So there's that. There's so many like normal teenage things that autism complicates. That
well, normal teenage things are complicated anyways. It's just adding another layer onto that.
Oh, middle school isn't pleasant for anyone,
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Yes. Yeah. So what would you say to the mom who feels like nothing's working right now and is questioning if homeschooling is really the right choice?
I work with a lot of parents on expectations. We have this Pinterest image in our minds of what homeschool looks like, and that is not the reality. And I'm lucky that we have Mr. Sims as part of our group. Mr. Sims comes on this time of year and says, "Oh, we're not getting anything done in the classroom either. Like it's spring, nobody's killing it at school right now." So when we have brand new students who are young or are new to the expectation of academic performance, sometimes you might only get 20 minutes of school a day. 3 activities. We advise to start with 3. Do 1, take a break. Do a second one, take a break. Then if they can get that third one, they get a big prize. Go to go for a drive. We're making cookies, whatever your kid's into. But just those 3 things per day can be a full day.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be sitting at a desk, doing a worksheet with a pencil. My son does math in my chair here. We do history at the airport. We drive to our little local airport. We park out at the end of the runway, and I read to him history, and sometimes we do a quick spell to communicate lesson. And then we regularly take breaks to watch the little airplanes take off and land. And it's a perfect rhythm because we both have ADHD and we both need something else, every couple of minutes. And so, and for some reason, he can sit still in the car much better than in a chair at home or standing at home. So he's more of a captive audience in the car. So we do that. We do science on the patio, and we do like other spell to communicate literature and stuff out on the patio. He also is really into physics this year. And so, and so I let him watch physics lectures on the back patio on the iPad. And he, a lot of times, will pace around the yard and rip up the lemon tree leaves while he listens. But I just let him take that in because that's a college level lecture.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
It makes smoke come out of my ears, and he's walking around going, yeah, like he totally understands all of it. So I would say expectations as far as the amount of work and also what it looks like.
Right. Yeah.
And also just respect the season. I mean, this year we're crushing it. But in 2003 and the first half of 2004, well, all of 2004. Now, by the first half of 2004, we did none, like none. He couldn't. I couldn't safely be within 6 feet of him most of the time.
Right.
And so, our kids do well, and then they get sick, and then they do well, and then dad gets deployed, and then they do well, and then grandma has to come live with us because she's end of life,
right. Yep.
That success is not a straight line.
But
Yeah.
it's the academic success that we're often looking at. We're not looking at what they're learning in the process of all those life experiences and how we're handling them and how they're integrated into that family, just kind of, navigation of that whole experience. So they are learning. It's just not they're
Oh, they
learning
are.
what's in the curriculum.
Well, they could even learn the curriculum receptively. So I did homeschool with my son, but it was all verbal and he just listened. And,
Right.
during that time, I was like, just listen to me. I'll speak really softly and you can just listen. And now this year, now that he's able to once again expressively show mastery, he's showing mastery of all of those things that I only exposed him to,
Wow.
passively. So,
Exactly.
yeah, so that receptive learning is real and it works.
So I was going
Also,
to say, what has in the span since you started homeschooling till now, what's one thing that you would have just never dreamed that your son would be able to do when you first started that you've now seen happen?
it's spell to communicate, and I have the same story as every parent. I always presumed my son's competence, his intellectual competence, because he's always been able to show it pretty well.
Yeah.
I presumed that he had average intelligence. Spell to communicate has shown that he has superior intelligence. I mean, the kid has understanding of things I never thought I taught him. Like he must just pick up everything. And he has such an understanding of history and other cultures and just a respect for just things happening in the world. And so to be able to discuss tariffs with him, he gets it. Like he's interested.
Yeah.
He wants to know all of it. As a former journalist, I watch documentaries for fun. Like I want to know everything about everything. I don't care what it is, just give me all of the information. And I would info dump on my son a lot as a homeschool teacher. And I assumed it annoyed him. And one day I was saying, I'm sorry, I know you probably don't want to know the complete history of Wall Street, but I'll tell you anyway. And he grabbed me by the face. Our kids do this thing where they grab our face and they put their faces right up. And he looked me in the eye and he went like, yes,
Oh,
I want to
wow.
know. And I'm like, you want to know everything about everything? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So now I start every Monday talking about like what the news is. I read to him from the Wall Street Journal headlines, and he wants to know all of it. He watched the entire Republican National Convention, the entire Democrat National Convention. He watched the debates. He watched the inauguration. We watched the Dragon splashdown from when the astronauts came back from the International Space Center. He knows all about how the ISS is going to be taken offline soon. He loves all of that stuff. So I never in a million years thought that I could discuss tariffs with my non-speaking 14-year-old, but he understands it. He has the intellectual capability to understand more than neurotypical 14-year-olds. That's very exciting.
That is exciting. So as we're wrapping up, can you tell us about the Autism Oasis, just kind of how you started it, why you started it, and then what you do to help families that are in a similar place where you were?
So I originally started this Autism Oasis to be a resource for moms. I was, it was the influencer, guru boss, life coach kind of, it was the late 2010s, and that's what everybody was into. So that's what I was going to do. And I quickly discovered that special needs moms don't like to spend money on themselves, which I should have known because I wasn't doing it either. And then the pandemic hit, and I saw the opportunity for homeschool because so many families had their kids come home. And number one, couldn't do online school. Number two, were horrified at the lack of academics in the online school.
Yeah.
And we're searching for something better. And I already had a program and I know how to build websites. So I just digitized it and it took off. As a single mom with a non-speaking guy, I don't get to work full time. And yet the company has doubled in size every single year since I started offering it without much work on my end. So it works. We really focus on the foundational academic skills, the skills that students must master in order to move up.
Right.
Things like understanding that letters aren't just symbols, they mean something, same about numbers, right?
Yeah.
And so we are very focused on getting all of those skills up to a 4th or 5th grade level. And then after that, it's all just repeat and slightly more complicated, right? Okay. And so we take our time getting to that 4th or 5th grade level. And then Mr. Sims has found from experience that kids often leapfrog up after that and can catch up to their peers. And that happened with my son. This year we did 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math.
Yeah.
And he's just zooming through it. He loves it, and it's because we spent 2 years on place value. I mean, place value was so hard and we were grinding, and he finally got it. So now when we're dividing fractions, he understands it. Or working in decimals are easy. He understands decimals because we worked so hard on place value 4 years ago. So that's really what we focus on, is getting that foundation down and, and providing the support to parents. Each semester program that I have online has about 200 little 5-minute instructional videos where I go clear down to like, cover this up, point at this, say this, ask if he wants to point. No? Okay, we'll keep going. Uncover this. How about this? Turn the page, cut it up, put it on the wall. Like, just so many little snippets of support. And then once a week on Monday, we have a live Zoom meeting with Mr. Sims. And so the parents can come on and ask him any question that they'd like. And I record it because, as you alluded to, a lot of times our parents are, have the camera off and are doing something else while they're listening. And so I only have about 10 parents show up live, but then I have like 400 watch the replay over the next week. I'm sure you're very
exactly. Yeah. That's just our community. And I mean, I've been there, done that. I totally get it.
I can barely show up on Monday night and I have someone to take care of my son.
Right. Yeah. So, well, this has been really encouraging. And yes, you can go to the autismoasis.com. I had that up on the screen, but also in the show notes will be a hyperlink. So you can just click on it and find Heather and her resources and reach out to her if you have any questions about that.
Yes.
So thank you so much. This has been such an encouraging conversation. And thank you for sharing your heart and your story with us today. What a gift it was to hear what's possible when we keep showing up for kids, even when their path is anything but clear, which is hard. And so just thank you for keeping on and being that example.
Well, thank you for sharing your story as well, Peggy. Like I feel better talking to you now. And I've always respected you as being a mom kind of like me that can't just do the homeschool the mom, but has to build something as well. And so thank you so much for sharing your format with me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us. If you're in the thick of it right now, just know you're not alone. There's hope, there's healing, and it's possible. It may not look like someone else's story, but it is worth pursuing. Be sure to check out the Autism Oasis to connect more with Heather. And don't forget to visit spedhomeschool.com for practical support, encouragement, and some great freebies to help you on your homeschool journey. And if this episode was encouraging you, take time to scroll through our other conversations. There's so many amazing guests who have walked this road and have wisdom to share. Thanks for spending time with us today. And remember, you're doing wholly important work at your home. Keep going. We're cheering you on. Until next time, homeschool boldly and confidently, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody. take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
2 weeks old in an iron lung, which is, like a sealed oxygen unit, fighting for my life. I couldn't breathe properly. And apparently I didn't make a sound from the day I was born because my lungs were all messed up.
That's Martin Smith of Delirious sharing a personal testimony on The Walk, a podcast for worshipers. Join us weekly to hear songwriters, worship leaders, filmmakers, and other creatives tell stories in the form of a devotional. The Walk can be found on lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcast platform.